So hello and welcome to the UCFB LMA Insight series, where we speak to some of the most important names in football management and get a taste of their career in the game. My guest today is a Bristol Rovers legend, following 3 spells with the club as a player and a manager. He's led 2 teams to the Premier League and even has his own podcast. Ian Holloway, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Neil. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Just make sure you're refreshed for the interview ahead. Good to go. But how is the podcast?
Yeah, it's just starting up. I was going to do it about a year and a bit ago with some great guys who work in Bristol, JMP. So my wife and I have started it back up. They like the fact that Kim gives me a bit of stick on there. So we're going to have a bit of fun with it and see what we can do.
I was having a little listen this morning, and there's a couple of bits I'd like to bring up, but we're at university. We can't say some of these things, so we'll let them use their imagination to go listen to it.
Yeah.
But obviously, you're renowned for your motivational skills and your man management, and then maybe being quite unique in the football world. How did you create that as you became a manager?
I didn't really. It's just me. If you knew my background and my family, you probably understand. Anybody who knew my dad, he was the life and soul of a party. He loved football, and I did, so I could spend a lot of time with him. Being the youngest, I had my mum in my little pocket anyway, and she was fun as well. Absolute wonderful sense of humour. So really, that was it. Anything that went wrong in our house, we'd end up shouting and bawling a little bit and then having a laugh about it. So I think you can't change. That's the thing. Whatever you are, you have to embrace it and go with it. And obviously, dealing not just with football, when you're a manager, as a player, you don't have so many interviews, but as a manager, you're interviewed every minute of every day almost, for the program, for the telly, for the radio. So you've got to get used to it no matter what. So, I felt I had to be me. You look at it, you think you're somebody, but really deep down, you have to be your authentic self. Otherwise, it'll never work. So that's why anything, happens in my life, I like to have a bit of a laugh about it. I.e., in school, I had a big nose. People used to call me Big Nose every now and again, because children aren't the nicest, are they? When they're younger, they say what it is, and I had better jokes about my nose than they did. So in the end, I gave myself more stick than they did, and they'd leave you alone then. So we all learn how to deal with things, but I do like a laugh, and boy, don't we realise that now in this terrible pandemic we're in.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, you say it's you, it's your personality, which is great. With like the one-liners and the sound bites, which obviously you're famed for, is a lot of that kind of you just trying to make the interview a bit more fun as well?
Well, not really. No, I'm reacting to whatever you're asking me. And if do you think you should have won by more? Are you disappointed you lost? Why did your team let so many goals in? I mean, you get the same sort of questions, and it is rather boring. So I like to put a bit of life into things, and as a leader, you've got to try and get people on board with what you're saying, and get their focus. And everybody's different. Everybody's an individual, so you've got to try and find the way into that person. So when I first started off, I was angry with the press most of the time, because I was Bristol Rovers manager, I was a Bristol Rovers supporter, I was a player for Bristol Rovers at the time, and I just took everything personal. Everything they asked me, I was angry all the time, and it didn't work. So after that, I thought, right, you can't be like that. Just be yourself and say it how it is. And some of the things I would say in meetings to my players. So I find it very easy to talk to people, because I'm not hiding anything. I'm not pretending to be anything. So that's why you either love me or hate me. A bit of a Marmite, really, I think, because I am who I am and I won't change.
So do you think authenticity is as an important quality then in a manager and a leader?
It was for me. Everybody, everybody's different. You can't try and look at him, does he man? I remember when I first started, should I wear a suit or should I wear a tracksuit? Because there is a different choice, isn't there? What type of manager you want to be? But I found with a tracksuit on, I got too involved on the sideline. So, in the end, I wore my suit and tie and represented the club. But, you got to find your own way. And the most difficult thing is dealing with how you're feeling about how your team's playing. If it's gone well, you can't be too lively and jubbly. And if it's gone bad, you can't be too somber and too down. So, really, it is like being an actor, I suppose, if I'm being brutally honest with you, and, you only got half an hour after a game to deal with a terrible result, and you got to try and make everybody feel you're going to be fine. So I'd say that was the hardest part of being a manager, to be honest, because you have to face up, front up, even when whatever you decided before the game, the lads have had a bad performance and didn't produce it. You got to try and be the one who doesn't blame them too much and makes a positive out of it. So it's something that you will have to learn. Not everybody can do it, and that's why I believe not everybody can be a manager. Some assistant managers are great when they don't have to go in the limelight. Sure. You get too close to the flame, it can burn you. But I've always been sort of pretty out there, really, being the youngest of 3 children and wanting the attention. I fought for it over mum and dad and with mum and dad from my brother and sister, and I feel like I won in the end. That's why I'm so busy.
I mean, you mentioned obviously your relationship there with the media initially. As a manager, you've got to have numerous relationships at your club, your players, your board, owners, etc. What is the most important relationship, do you think, for a football manager to have?
Oh, they're all important. I think they're all equally important. What you want is a bond between you and your players. You want to create a common goal that you're all aiming for. Get everybody pointing in the same direction. Talk about values. Hopefully, you all have the same values, and make it clear to them what you want, and then never change. So, because you see them every day. Obviously, managing up the chief executive or the chairman, you need a vital relationship. But I could guarantee you, I've never had one owner who's the same as the next one. They're all very, very different, and sometimes fostering that relationship can be very, very difficult. And these days, there's many more layers to that managing up. They've got you have got a chief executive now. You have got I've had a director of football, Les Ferdinand, who I knew well. He was in between me and a CEO. So that is difficult, but that's your politician's hat. That is with the players. You're just one of them,
yeah.
And you have to lead like you would be in the battle with them. That's what they want you to do and stand up for them. So it's something you learn, and each club you go to is very different. So you have to find what you can say, when you can say it, depending on who you're with. But really, that's what I'm saying. That my authentic self, the more experienced I became, the more I let myself in the boardroom as well. And that don't always go too well. But I can't be any different. What you see is what you get from me, and I like you to know where you stand with me, and I like to know where I stand with you. So that's my style of management. Has it always worked? No, it hasn't, because some people don't like the brutality of the honesty that I give them. And if they're doing things in their life that I don't like off the pitch, I will hammer them about that as well and try and get them in line. So it's the whole package, really. For me, you have to be committed, you have to do it right. And it didn't always work. When it did, it was very, very good. When it wasn't, I didn't last long in those clubs. So, but again, I only lived the way that I wanted to. So I would definitely say that in it to anybody. Be yourself, find yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself and in a way of doing it, how is anybody else going to follow you?
No, fair, Sam. Can't argue with that. Believe in yourself. Have be authentic. Good advice. I wanted to ask you a few questions actually on your career as a manager, some specifics. Now, you were promoted 3 different clubs: QPR, Blackpool, and Crystal Palace. Which promotion gave you the most satisfaction, if you could pick?
I think the most important one was the first one with Queen's Park Rangers. I took over there. We went into administration. We had a very wealthy owner who was in terrible trouble with his rugby club and football club. He owned Wasps and Queen's Park Rangers. So we had people telling us what they were going to do, but they didn't realise, the administrators, that the players' union was too strong. They couldn't just sack people. They couldn't tell them to go home and we're not going to pay you. So, I had to fight through that. And I don't think the rest of it would have come if I wouldn't have got them Queen's Park Rangers back up when I did. So that was the one that, after feeling the pain of the relegation, after everybody almost going bust and then coming back and getting them promoted 3 years later, was really somewhat special. And obviously, to have had success, you also need failure to understand how good the success is then. So each one on their own merits was wonderful. I think the one that got the most publicity was Blackpool, because we were an unfashionable club. And some of the media took great fun in trying to belittle us a little bit, saying we were going to be the worst club ever in the top flight to get less than 11 points. And we used that. We got 39. We still got relegated, but it was a lot better than they said. So I take great pride and pleasure in all of them, but I have to say, I think the Queen's Park Rangers one gave me a bit of longevity. So and having played for them as well, that was quite special.
I mean, you mentioned,
I surprised you there.
Well, I suppose yes, and my next question is going to be about Blackpool. With you mentioned it there, kind of
there you go.
A bit, as you say, maybe unfancy. But was it a case of, obviously you got to have belief in yourself? The players have to believe in themselves. Was the mentality a case of us versus them, and a bit of a siege mentality for that season? How did you approach it?
Yeah, I was like a caged lion. I've been out of work for a year, and I was writing a new way of playing. I wanted to tell my players everywhere the ball was in possession. I wanted them to have a plan, and I wanted them to think about where I wanted them to put the ball and why. And then when we lost it, I wanted them to immediately win it back. So they had to be really aware and on it, to not just go back into a defensive structure, to actually try and win it back where it was, which was a little bit different. So I, right from day one, I was totally focused on, we're going to do it this way. If you can't do it, then I'll get rid of you, because this is how I want it done. And they realized very quickly that the parameters of what I gave them, we're going to practice and we're going to keep doing it. And if you want to play in the team, you've got to do it that way. So it was very, very simple, and I stuck to it. And from my point of view, the lads did it so well, it made it easy. So, that's why we had success. We weren't expected to go up. We were favourites to go down that year with the bookies. So our fans loved it, because I actually said we're going to play an expansive open game, try and keep the ball. And it was a roller coaster ride. It was absolutely fantastic in the end, because we managed to do it in style which everybody else liked. We actually attacked our way, going behind in games, coming back and winning them. So you couldn't get much better than that, really.
How do team talks differ, maybe from Championship to Premier League? And as a manager, obviously, from a personal point of view, there's obviously a step up in quality, League One, Championship, Premier League. But how do you, as a manager, make that leap? It's your first year managing in the top flight. Um, what is that? What is that approach for you?
Well, the approach was the same, and what I mean by that, I said right at the start, I'd watched an awful lot of high quality football. I was being paid to watch football and then talk on it on the radio, which was great. So I got into games for free, and people wanted my opinion on them. So I watched some wonderful games. Man United 5 times. I personally went down and watched Swansea on my own to have a look how they were playing, and then I had a trip away to Spain to watch the Spanish team train, and I watched Real Madrid train and Atletico Madrid, and I came back and I said to my players, are they born great players or are they trained that way? And I believe they were trained that way. So I'd seen some of their sessions and what they did. I felt their practices were perfect, and they stuck with them. So I wrote my own down, tried to make up what I didn't see, and thought, yeah, that'll work, and worked on it and made it consistent. So I said, I will train you to be a professional Premier League footballer. I believe they're not born. I believe they're trained, and I want you to continue in those practices. And if you do it consistently enough and you apply yourself well enough, I believe you'll be good enough. So right from day one, I was telling them that that's what I wanted from them, and I felt the practices worked, and I had some great players anyway. But they liked playing that way. They liked dominating the ball. They liked talking about attacking. My centre halves liked me telling them, I want you to score and open play. You're free to, if you play it wide, go forward. Someone else will fill in for you. And at first they didn't get it right, but we worked at it and we kept going. And, you know, in the end, anybody on a game of football should be free. The ball can go anywhere it likes. So should you be if your teammates are aware of where you've gone and what space you've left and how we got to fill that. So we can interchange and rotate. And I believe we could do that even if we got to the top. And funny enough, we proved it, but they sussed us in the end, and we didn't quite have a strong enough squad to stay there. But, you know, as I say, we took it in. We weren't going to change, because once you commit to something, how can you uncommit and do something else?
Yeah.
You can, you know. So really, you're all in, you know, all in. All my chips are in. That's how we're going to do it, and on we go. And then you need to still believe when it goes wrong, and that's the hard thing, particularly in the higher level. You know, in the Championship, for Blackpool, they were happy they stayed up that year, you know, and they finished 16th. And I said, that's not the right mindset. Why are you happy to be at the bottom of this table? Why, just because you come up, why don't we try and get to the next one? So, you know, it was all a plan to try and change the mindset. And really, as you go, your doubts are what kill you. We all have doubts, I believe. And what you have to do is learn to conquer them, feel the fear, and do it anyway.
Now, football is obviously, it's full of highs, as we talked about. It's full of lows. But do you have any regrets from your career management at all?
That's a good question. I'm expecting that one. Yeah, I think in hindsight's a wonderful thing. And once all I can tell you is not one manager has ever set a team up to lose. You know, we don't do that. But after the game, you've seen how someone's played. We've all witnessed it, and then you probably wish you hadn't put him there, or you didn't want him to do that. So you then have a different opinion. So, you know, really what you have to do is learn to commit and learn from that, you know. So the great thing about football is the ball never stays still. You have to learn to control it. Every game's different. Even if you're in the lead, your opponent will have some sort of ascendancy at some sort of time, and you've got to deal with that. So you're learning all the time. And And when it goes wrong, if you're brave enough, you can take responsibility for what happened, talk about it openly, work on what you would do if that ever happens again, and hopefully you'll improve. And really, that is what life's all about. And I developed this saying with the lads. It's very simple. It's only three things. We do it, then we review it, and then we redo it. And that's the process. And if you think about that, I believe successful people in all walks of life, that's exactly what they do. They don't get scared when it goes wrong. They don't blame anyone else when it goes wrong. They look at it, they dissect it, and then they do it again. Just like the Romans did. First time they fought the Greeks smashed them to bits. The Romans went away, looked at the length of their swords and the size of their shields, and they adjusted it and went back and smashed them. So if it's good enough for the Romans, it's good enough for all of us.
Fair enough. Yeah. Let's say do it and do it again, do it better. Absolutely.
That's it.
As a manager, have you based yourself on maybe someone you were led by as a player? Is there anyone as a player who really influenced you?
Not really a player. It was Jerry Francis. Really, my career was going nowhere fast until I met Jerry. He brought me back. I was at Brentford. He brought me back to Bristol Rovers, and my career kicked off after that. Really, what I was hungry for was knowledge of. I don't want to hear I just had a bad game. What could I have done? How could I have improved? So I was always very fit, but Jerry talked about, well, your man's got him behind you because your shoulders were twisted the wrong way. If you open up there, you can be able to see him. Don't let him out of your sight. Don't let him see your number, and that's better. And good gracious me, he knew things that could actually improve me, and that was I was like a information junkie. I needed to know, and I wanted to do it, and I had a thirst. I had a quest for knowledge, and the second I met Jerry Francis, for me that was it. I used to go home, sit down, and think about what he said to the fullbacks. Think about what he said. One of us, he could not coach, even so much so that we had a goalie who went off with England, Nigel Martin. He came back, and Jerry corrected him. He said, "You've been too close to that near post. You would have got that. Who's telling you to do that?" And they did it in England. He went, no, get out of the way. And he put himself where he needed to be. You need to get across and catch that. You're too close to your near. You cannot. We're all like, oh my God, this bloke knows everything about every position. So he turned into my guru, and that was it. After that, I thought, well, if he knows all of this, why can't I think about things? And I was lucky enough to get taken from Bristol Rovers to Queen's Park Rangers with him, and he had a huge influence in my career.
Great man, Jerry Francis. All around the club, isn't he? Fantastic career.
Brilliant player.
You mentioned at the top about obviously, the current situation we're all living through, been difficult for a lot of people. How did you find it when you was at Grimsby, with suddenly going from fans to no fans? How does that affect players and managers? I mean, as a fan, it looks pretty rubbish watching games with empty stadiums. What's it like to actually be taking part in that?
Yeah, it's bitterly disappointing, to be honest. I mean, we were on such a high when it got shut down before, just beaten Scunthorpe. Our home crowd was a record that year. We'd gone from 4,000 up to 6,500. So that's a third. We put a third on the gate. They were all singing and happy, and then all of a sudden we've had a start. The team weren't the same. The feelings aren't the same. It's not as intense. You need the fans to be on you and at you. You need to have that level in you to be able to perform. And I'm sure an actor on stage in a theatre would not give such a good performance if there was no one there, you know, particularly a pantomime. He's behind you, no one would be saying that, would they? You know, and it's not quite the same. So yeah, it's bitterly disappointing. And the quicker we're all allowed back to do the things we like to do, the better, really. You know, hopefully we'll do it safely. Hopefully we'll all be inoculated, and hopefully that'll all work. But we really do need to get back to a bit of normal. Maybe it'll be a new normal. Maybe we'll have to do things like we're doing right now. You know, these things are excellent, you know, to still connect with people. A tad frustrating at times when you can't get on there and you're on the wrong link or God knows what, but you know, we're trying to get it right.
No, well, the amount of video calls we've all been doing over the last year, I think we've all got a few technical difficulties. So you're not on your own there. Don't worry about that.
That's all right then.
Couple of fun questions for you. You're in charge of FIFA, and you're allowed to change one thing about football. What is it?
Wow. I think I'd make the goals a bit bigger.
Yeah.
That sounds weird. I'd want more efforts at goals, so I want to score more goals. So maybe you'd make them a bit bigger. But really, the game is so wonderful. Do you really need to muck about with it? You know. I suppose I would also ban people from diving, give them a lifetime ban if they're caught trying to feign a penalty. That is tantamount to cheating.
Yeah.
You know, really is. So why you would need to cheat to win a game is beyond me. You know, I was taught to try and win fairly, you know. So it is weird, but there was a lot of things I'd have liked to said about FIFA before, but I'm trying to keep this clean. And you know, I feel they've mucked about with the game too much. And I do really feel they should leave it alone. There isn't a lot wrong with it, really. So definitely, I want to see more goals, make the goals a tad bigger, a little bit wider, maybe a little bit higher. There you go.
More goals, more attacking play. I think everyone will be entertained by that. That'd be fine.
But
you talk about obviously like maybe mess around with the game a little bit. But what are your thoughts on VAR? I think it's here to stay, isn't it? But what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I hope it doesn't stay the way it's being adjudicated at the moment. Oh, good gracious me! It's how not to do it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it started off a clear and obvious. They changed the handball rule, which was a failure. You know, absolute failure at the start. And now I'm sure penalties aren't being given the same way as they were at the start of the season. I would do away with it. I don't think referees were that bad. I don't think we need as many angles to see it and slow motion stuff. You know, if it's not your feet that are off, you know, it should be your feet offside and you should have clear daylight. But even that, you know, there wouldn't be magicians, would there, if your eyes didn't deceive you sometimes? So I think it's spoiling the game at the moment, particularly how badly they're doing it. But if it does stay, get better, and stop disallowing goals. I want to see more goals. So some of these, you know, his elbow's offside. That don't make sense. You can't score with your elbow anyway. It's ridiculous.
No, I think most people would agree with that. It's the kind of smaller margin things which is just frustrating fans, isn't it, and players alike. Definitely.
Yeah, but you know, how many times do you have to look at it? You know, if it's not clear and obvious, just move on, innit? You know, and oh dear. Yeah, it's a bit of a debacle at the moment. Most things are, though, when you're trying to change it and find a new way of doing it. But dearie me, it's painful.
Yeah, no, painfully good way to describe it, definitely. And then we got a lot of it's a clean way to describe it as well. We've got a lot of aspiring coaches and coaching students at UCFB. What advice can you give to them to make it to the top of the game?
Well, I wrote some words down to make sure I get them right. You know, I think I think if you want to coach people, it's not about you, it's about them. And you have to make sure that your sessions are aimed at them picking up the knowledge that you want them to go out and add to their game. So, you know, but without some fundamental things, you're never going to make it. You know, as a coach, you got to go through things to make sure you're giving that person the chance to grow. So, you know, I'm talking about your own focus, your own dedication to the points that you want to pass over, your application. Make sure that you're in control of your own destiny, because the harder you work, the better you get. Be determined, have determination about you. You know, in other words, if that didn't work, don't give in. Let's have another go and do it. And persistence in a relentless way. You know, you have to have some sort of drive, you know, and always keep moving, you know, keep moving forward. If your team hasn't done it and it hasn't got it, that's not a disaster. Be brave enough to think about what you told them and then redo it and keep polishing at the end of the day. You know, it's never happened, it's never done. And the more you polish it, the better it'll get. You know, unfortunately, a lot of the time you have a bit of success. Oh, that's great. And you step back and you lose that edge, you know. So I think anything's possible, providing you are on top of yourself, you know, and a lot of us start not truly believing in ourselves. You know, I wasn't taught to believe in myself. I had to work towards that, you know, and I very quickly learned that the more knocks you take in life and the less you accept it and you keep getting up and you keep going, the more chance you've got of winning, you know. And I think it took Mr. KFC, Colonel Saunders, it took him, he was rejected 1,001 times with his recipe. On the 1,002nd time, he cooked it for someone, and that someone went, wow, let's do it. But he got rejected 1,001 times. How many of us would be strong enough to keep going that many times? So for me, the only time you can actually fail is if you don't keep going and you don't want it bad enough, you don't work hard enough, because you should be polishing yourself. Be a demon for knowledge, and I can't see you failing.
That's great. Demon for knowledge. It's a fantastic little quote. Absolutely. Ian Holloway, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you very much, Neil.